There are stories in life that quietly rise above all ordinary explanations. They are not loud stories, and they are not the kind of tales that make headlines every day. But when they do appear, they stay with us forever. They leave a mark on the heart and a question in the mind. One such story is the story of a little baby named Brian Thomas Gallagher. Brian's life on earth was shorter than most of us could ever imagine. He lived less than 1 hour, a single hour of breathing, a few fragile moments in the arms of this world, and then he was gone. To most, a life so short might pass unnoticed, but nearly 4 decades later, his small body would return in a way no one expected, and his story would become a mystery that science could not explain, but faith could not ignore. Brian was born in 1982 on a military base at Fort Knox, Kentucky. His parents, Shaw and Mary Pat Gallagher, were a young Catholic couple full of hope. Like every expectant mother and father, they looked forward to the day when they would hold their child, watch him grow, and raise him in faith and love. But instead of joy, sorrow entered their lives that day. Complications during delivery meant that their newborn son would not live long. He was born alive. He breathed for a short while, but before an hour had passed, Brian slipped away. The grief of losing a child is unlike any other grief. It is not only the pain of loss, but also the pain of lost possibility. Parents grieve not only for the life that ended, but also for the life that never had the chance to unfold. For Shaw and Mary Pat, those moments carved a wound in the heart that time alone could never erase. Yet even in the middle of that heartbreak, they turned to the one thing that gave them strength, their Catholic faith. Knowing that their child's life was fading quickly, they urgently asked for baptism. The Catholic chaplain on the base was called, and though the details of the ritual were never written down, and the parents themselves did not see it with their eyes, they trusted that their request had been honored. In Catholic belief, what matters most in such desperate moments is the intention. The Church teaches about something called the baptism of desire. It means that when someone truly longs for God's grace, even if human circumstances make the sacrament incomplete, God does not hold back His mercy. With this hope in their hearts, Shaw and Mary Pat entrusted their son to God. After Brian's short life, the Gallaghers made a quiet decision. Since Fort Knox was not their permanent home, they chose to bury their son in Highmore, South Dakota. Near his extended family, it was a small act of love, a way to place him close to his family roots. For years, Brian rested there in silence. His grave was known only to his parents, remembered quietly in their prayers, carried in their hearts. As they went on with life, decades passed. Life, as it always does, moved forward. The Gallaghers continued with their journey, holding on to faith and cherishing the memory of their son. Yet no matter how many years went by, Brian was never forgotten. The pain of losing a child softens with time, but it never disappears. It becomes a part of who you are, a reminder that love always reaches beyond death. Then came the year 2019. Shaw and Mary Pat had grown older, and as many couples do, they began to plan for their own future burial. They wanted to be laid to rest at the Black Hills National Cemetery, near Sturgis. Out of love, they also wanted Brian moved there so that their family could be united in death as they had longed to be in life. To them, it was a simple, loving plan, nothing more than bringing their family together. What they did not know was that this decision would uncover something extraordinary. When workers came to exhume the small casket in Highmore, they expected what every funeral director expects when a grave is open after nearly 4 decades. They expected skeletal remains, fragile bones, and perhaps traces of clothing. But instead, they found something that left even trained professionals in disbelief. The casket was accidentally pierced during the removal. This meant that the funeral director had to open it to check the condition before transferring it to the new burial place. What he saw inside shocked him. Instead of bones and dust, he found a tiny body that looked untouched by time. Brian's features were visible. His skin was soft and supple. His face still looked lifelike. His hair remained in place. There was no odor, no mold, no sign of decay. Even more astonishing, his body was still flexible. After 37 years underground, his small form had not stiffened or collapsed as every natural law says it should have. The funeral director himself admitted he had never seen anything like it. In his words, Brian's body was still pliable enough that they were able to remove his clothes, wash them, and then redress him before placing him in a new casket. For the Gallaghers, this was overwhelming. Their son, whom they had held for less than an hour and then carried in memory for nearly 40 years, was suddenly before them again, whole and untouched by time. For many, it was nothing short of a miracle. For others, it was an unexplained mystery that science had no ready answer for. And for people of faith, it was a silent message that life, even one measured in minutes, holds eternal meaning. News of what had happened spread quietly. At first, the funeral director, a man familiar with the ordinary realities of death, could not keep silent about what he had witnessed. In his years of work, he had seen everything that time and nature could do to the human body. He had seen remains reduced to little more than fragments. He had seen caskets filled with dust and broken bones, but never had he seen a child's body preserved so perfectly after nearly for decades. He spoke of it with reverence, calling it a mystery, a moment he would never forget. When the Gallaghers held their son's body again, their grief and faith met in a new way. Imagine being parents who had once cradled their child for only minutes before he slipped away, and then, decades later, seeing him once more as if no time had passed. There are no words to describe that feeling. It is something only the heart can understand. For Catholics, the discovery called to mind other moments in history where God seemed to intervene in the ordinary course of decay. The Church has a long tradition of incorrupt saints, men and women whose bodies did not decompose after death. Saints like Bernadette of Lourdes, who died in 1879 and whose body still rests intact in France, or St. Catherine of Bologna, whose body has remained preserved since the 15th century. These examples have long been considered signs of holiness, mysteries that science struggles to explain. But Brian's case was different. He was not a famous saint. He was not a priest or a nun, nor someone known for a lifetime of virtue. He was a baby who lived less than an hour. Yet, in his tiny and hidden life, something extraordinary seemed to have been revealed. It was as if God wanted to remind the world that every life, no matter how short, is precious and eternal. Of course, not everyone would call it a miracle. Some would suggest scientific explanations, unusual soil conditions, lack of moisture, or perhaps even the construction of the casket. But none of those theories explain what was actually seen. Soil can slow decomposition, but it cannot stop it completely. For nearly 40 years. Lack of air can help preserve remains, but it cannot keep skin soft, hair intact, and a body flexible. What was seen in Brian's case went beyond the boundaries of natural preservation. The Catholic Church, careful as always, did not rush to declare this an official miracle. The process of investigating such claims takes years, often decades. But for the Gallagher family and for those who witnessed it, no declaration was needed. The sign was already clear to them in their hearts. They believed God had chosen to reveal something beautiful through their son. When Brian was reburied at Black Hills National Cemetery, it was not just a burial. It was an act of faith, a testimony, and a moment of peace. His parents, now older and preparing for their own eternal rest, found comfort in knowing their son was near them. But more than that, they found peace in the knowledge that his story had touched hearts and lifted faith. The story of Brian Thomas Gallagher is not one of grand speeches or mighty deeds. It is not about a man who led armies or a woman who performed public miracles. It is the story of a child who lived for less than an hour, and yet, in God's mysterious way, his life continues to speak decades later. His incorrupt body stands as a quiet witness to the truth that life does not end with death, and that God's ways are far beyond our understanding. For some, it will remain a mystery of science. For others, it will always be a miracle of faith. But for all who hear it, it is a reminder that the smallest lives are not forgotten, and that in God's hands, even one hour on earth can echo for eternity.